much, Mr. Chair, and of course it is good to be able to continue this conversation. And just to, I was a little bit surprised actually that the Liberals denied consent to allow this meeting to continue, because I was happy to continue talking about the divisions that Liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has inflicted upon our country. And Chair, let me just highlight a couple of examples of this, and to the very, very human level, is that when I speak with constituents, an increasingly common sentiment that I hear, and this is tragic, an increasingly common sentiment that I hear is that my constituents feel that Canada is broken. And in many cases, Chair, they will share things with me like they're simply not sure about whether our country has a future. In fact, there's some that feel like there's no option but to see that the consequences of disunity could be absolutely devastating to the future of our country. And Chair, the reason why that's so tragic is that it could have been avoided and should be the priority of any leader, of any member of a governing party. Their first priority in government should be one of national unity. Yet, Chair, we have seen over the last 8 years an intentionality put towards dividing Canadians for narrow political gain. And in fact, we saw that just this past week, how the Liberals intentionally included in a free trade agreement with Ukraine. They intentionally included a carbon tax mechanism into that. And it's shameful that they would be so intent on division that they would, even a country at war, to inflict that sort of, to play that sort of politics there is absolutely shameful. We see, Chair, I have the court ruling here, on the Impact Assessment Act. How we see that it was found to be largely unconstitutional. Bill C-69. Now, this should be no surprise to anybody who has listened to commentary on this subject over the last 6 or so years since this was introduced. Every province, in fact, the only thing we see provinces united in these days, it seems, is that they're united against the actions of Justin Trudeau, and that's certainly not a record that one should be proud of. I talked about the carbon tax. It has intentionally divided Canadians, and including, I mentioned the Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. Well, it was Conservatives that initially negotiated back in 2013. In fact, it was Stephen Harper who looked Vladimir Putin in the face and told him to get out of Ukraine. That's leadership, not like what we have seen by this division perpetrated by a Prime Minister, by Prime Minister Trudeau. We've seen that the carbon tax and this recent carve-out that benefits 3% of Canadians, it continues to punish the other 97% of Canadians, including those who are struggling to pay their bills, heating with propane, natural gas, and other forms that are still subject to that. We see that intentionality to divide. Chair, we see with conversations around equalization, where there should be the willingness to have real conversations with provinces. We have not seen that under Justin Trudeau. He may talk big about photo ops, but then when it comes to what happens behind closed doors, it's division and it's pitting region against region. We see that with the continued conversation around the emissions cap. Chair, I could only imagine that if the Prime Minister was to pick any other part of the country and tell them that they cannot do what they're good at. Could you imagine? Any other sector, any other, whether it be manufacturing, whatever the case is, pick a part of the country, and if the federal government was to swoop in and say you can't do what you're good at. Mr. Chair, it is absolutely shameful, the division that is being perpetrated on this country by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his Liberals. We see that with the KXL. You have, and this is the tragic irony, Chair, especially with the KXL pipeline, of which the Alberta portion of that pipeline is in my constituency, and I saw about 2,000 jobs lost because our Liberal Prime Minister refused to work with his American counterpart because they were so blinded by ideology around the future of energy security in North America that they canceled a pipeline at a time when we were saying, conservatives were vocally saying the entire time that energy security would be key to our world's security future. Yet we see that the Liberals capitulated. We see that with the Just Transition, Chair. It's an policy that is designed to divide Canadians for narrow political gain. We see this with LNG. Chair, again, there was, I think, 18 projects on the books when Justin Trudeau took office. Never before in Canadian history has, whether it be Canada's fiscal situation, whether it be with the economic opportunity, Justin Trudeau was handed a circumstance that any world leader would be jealous of. Yet he squandered it away for narrow political gain. And Chair, the reason why this is so applicable to the conversation that we are having today around this amendment and the motion is because the Liberals throughout the last 8 years have led our country to a point where it is Canadians have been pitted against one another, where there is division layered upon division. And the result is that we have seen less prosperity. The result is we have seen political divisions that are incredibly harmful. In fact, just this past week, you had Liberals that were almost incoherent because Canadians would dare question that they were concerned about that activist environment minister, the same environment minister who is criminally charged for environmental activism, that he would call and try to influence so-called independent senators, although it certainly showed their hand in the last week, that the Canadians would show concern about that members of that Liberal Party were so outraged that Canadians would dare share an opinion that contradicted their official narrative. It is truly unbelievable and shameful. So, Chair, many of my constituents, as I shared at the last meeting, remember Pierre Elliott Trudeau and the divisions perpetrated upon our country. And in fact, I still hear often, although Rick would probably remember some of those days. I wasn't I wasn't born yet, but I hear a common sentiment, Chair, that many are not surprised that the son of Pierre Elliott Trudeau would continue along that path where he, what is known as the Trudeau salute, he would continue to divide this country for political gain. Chair, it is unbelievable, it is unacceptable, and Canadians deserve better. So, Chair, I hope that this committee, I hope that Liberal, NDP, and Bloc members will take seriously this common sense amendment to try and take some of the language of division, the politics of division out of this motion that is brought forward for no other reason than to continue perpetrating that division upon Canadians, East versus West, North versus South, urban versus rural, and in this case, the rest of the country against Alberta. So, Chair, I look forward to continuing the discussion on this. I hope that this committee will see that better is possible, that we can bring home a country that is once again unified. However, the history of the last 8 years certainly does not give me and my constituents optimism in that regard, which is why we so desperately need a change. We need a government that is willing to put the unity of our country ahead of their personal, partisan, political, and as we increasingly see with a number of scandals that seem to be making Liberal insiders rich, their personal financial interests first. So thank you very much, Chair, for this opportunity. Certainly, I'd be happy to expand further on the connection between this amendment and the history that has led to the point that we were at today, and I certainly will do so. So, Chair, I would, as I cede my time to the next person on the list, I would ask to be put back on the list so that we can continue this conversation. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, MP Couric. I have got MP Blaikie, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'm certainly glad to have the opportunity to weigh in on the question of the Canada Pension Plan. And I think I'll start by talking a little bit about the plan, because we've heard there's been a lot of discussion around the table so far, particularly by Conservative members, but there hasn't actually been a lot of talk about the Canada Pension Plan. And I think that the Canada Pension Plan has been an excellent thing for Canadians. And the only deficiency, as far as I'm concerned, in the plan is that we're not paying enough into it to get a larger benefit out of it. When the Canada Pension Plan was designed, it was meant to only be a third of Canadians' retirement income, and it has been an incredible success in terms of what it was designed to be, which is just a third of what people would need to get by in retirement. The other third was to be a company pension, and the final third was to come from Canadians' own personal savings and investments. Now, we live in a Canada today where over 70% of people working at a job don't have a company pension plan of any kind, whether a defined contribution plan or a defined benefit plan. So right there, when we're talking